everybody, it is Matt and Dyan, and welcome back to Ok Aussie, the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, do so now whilst you're here, and welcome if you are a new member to our channel. Now, in today's episode, Dyan and I are going to have a bit of a conversation around IDD. Not your ID, but your IDD. Intellectual Developmental Delays. Now, with this, I'm just going to read a little brief quote on this because it puts it, I guess, in the context to what we're talking about. Intellectual and developmental disabilities. It refers to a group of conditions that begin during the developmental period and typically continue lifelong. These disabilities can affect how a person thinks, learns, and also interacts with other people. Now, you already know if you've been following the channel, but Dyan's got 22q, 11.2 deletion syndrome. She's got autism, ADHD, OCD, Tourette's, a whole range of neurological things going on. But with 22q, that chromosomal disorder where you've got a micro deletion on the 22nd chromosome, that means you're missing
it's not
millions,
so micro.
3 million DNA building blocks. It's 30 to 60 genes that are just gone.
So imagine if you did a puzzle and you wanted to put it on your wall in a frame, and there's missing like 180 pieces out of it. It's not going to be the same, is
That's
it?
not going to be much of a puzzle, is it? It's going to be like gaps, and it's like, does it make sense? Well, it's a bit like how your brain and how your body's funny.
And what the doctors do.
Correct. They
You're
also
puzzling.
You're funny that you say you got 22q because you've got 22 different specialists that are currently supposedly supporting and trying to work out this very rare condition and how to manage it. Now, coming back to 22q, it is a genetic condition. It affects many parts of your body. You said there's about 180, 185 different symptoms that you can have, and part of those are those names, you know, autism, ADHD, OCD, all those things.
But and in my childhood, autism was called, like for me,
for females particularly,
severe developmental delay was what they put me under. And hyperactivity.
So let's talk about those because it's very important that you brought up the severe.
I'm just telling the old names from the 70s.
Very important context
for my generation.
Because you're just a young whippersnipper. You're only 50 years of age. Now, with the 22q, it can cause, very specifically, we know this from all of the medical literature in this area, intellectual disability, learning and social challenges, speech and language difficulties. It is actually very well known for the causation of ADHD and also autism in a lot of people as well. You mentioned other developmental delays. There's also GDD, global developmental delays.
That's what I come under as well.
Now, let's have this conversation today about the IDD because I think it's very important because there's also a bit of a distinguishing factor, and I'm seeing a bit of this in conversations that I've seen
with you guys,
supports, organisations, even just on the threads. There's sometimes confusion. And look, I get it under the NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme. That's very complex.
I get it under, like, it's a case of, you know, it appears very similar to other things. So it's very understandable that people who either don't have it themselves or aren't a professional in this area, you don't understand the difference. But there is a difference.
And look, a lot of lay people obviously get very confused.
We want to help
totally appreciate
understand the difference.
Even just simply the understanding of autism has confused a lot of people because all the models have been based on boys. Male research. This is why so many females go underneath the radar, get confused with that. So
we're born with social skills. If you didn't know the psychology of the difference between what is the biggest difference between female autism and male autism is we are born with social skills because we are born to nurture babies.
So that's a very helpful thing that you're born with. Now, autism is not a mental illness, is it?
Autism is, like they do list it as a disorder, but if you ask most people, yes, we sometimes call it a disorder ourselves if it interferes with something that's significant in our life, of course, but it is not a mental illness. Yes, you could categorize it in many, because it's a spectrum, many parts of it is disordered, absolutely, because it really affects us, but it's not a mental illness.
No, and that's an important thing, I guess, to also understand.
Mental illness is something that, unless you are diagnosed with schizophrenia or bipolar. They are the only
true mental
illnesses that can be proven physiologically in science. So sadly, it doesn't mean that the pseudoscience isn't real. It just means that it's it can be easily wrong.
Okay.
So if you have a mental illness, you've always got to be very proactive about that and make sure that they're getting it right. But that's not what I'm talking about here, but that's just how I would explain, because I've studied the DSM in my qualifications, so I have a very good understanding. We had to learn it very well, and the DSM does cover comorbidities. Comorbidities is basically, to define it, it is physical conditions that are attached to your psychosocial condition, like autism, etc. And then coexisting conditions are things like my OCD, my Tourette's, that, okay?
Now, you seem to know a lot about this subject because
I studied it.
You've studied it. You've actually
That's
gone through and
why.
studied psychology.
And then
You've
when
got
I
a lived
spoke
experience.
to my psychiatrist, he knew my level, because they do want to know your level of education. And even though mine's tertiary, think of it as being some autistics, and this is a spectrum. If you're not a spectrum, a continuum. If you're a savant, many autistics are a savant of something.
Think of them like an
multiple
extreme
things.
expert, a specialist in something,
Yes.
very, very highly intelligent
But it's a
in one thing.
continuum. So don't think that it's like they can read every, name out of the phone book. It's not always the extreme.
Like that Rayman
It can
type
be mild, it could be
approach.
moderate, or it could be extreme. So, but we all have it. So when we study something, it is very much a false appearance that we give.
And that comes to about special interest or hyper focus in something as well.
Socially dumb, but in our special interest. And you particularly see that in male autistics. They might be an engineer and they're really good at it. And then you sit down at the lunchroom and have a chat. They'll just sit there and just listen because they don't have the social skills.
And I bring this up, and before I go into it too, you also mentioned the DSM. The DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, that's something which
5
actually
is out now.
explains all the different conditions under the areas of mental illness, mental health, psychology,
Correct.
psychiatry, for
And
diagnosing
really,
basically.
Tony Atwood and I agree on this.
That Australian
so Tony
psychologist who
Atwood,
specialises in
shout
females
out to you.
with
Check
autism.
him out, particularly exactly for females. But I'm just going to agree with him here. I've been studying psychology for 25 years.
Oh, a bit of a special interest, this one.
Formally for some of it, and informally for the rest of it.
Hey, once you get hooked in a special interest, you don't tend to deviate off path.
That one's never changed.
No.
But what I'm explaining is, I agree with him.
Tony Atwood, yeah.
Tony Atwood.
Dr. Tony.
Yeah, he says that no, I've just lost the
I'm so
beginning
sorry.
'cause you went on a tangent.
That's okay. We'll come back to it in a moment and see if you can pick it
What
up
did
as
you
we go
first
along.
say?
We're talking about the DSM. We're talking about
Oh, the DSM. So
Let me
basically,
retract
yeah,
that.
he doesn't. If he was to use his preferred speech, because of course he has to go with what the speech is, because the parents that he helps, the people that he helps, because he does focus on the young, because that's early intervention's key. But basically, the problem is, if he chose what his chosen lingo would be, he wouldn't call it a disorder. He would call it a difference.
Yeah.
And I do agree with it.
I do actually like that word difference, because it is a different way of
And
everything.
if you
different
look
way
at
of thinking.
anthropology, which I've studied that as well as electives because of my fascination of human beings, because
Studying
naturally,
people.
being a non-verbal child most of my life, people fascinated me. I needed to know how they ticked. And so basically when I studied anthropology, even the villagers looked after the different people.
Sure. So let's talk specifically more about the IDD, the intellectual and developmental disability here. It's not something which just suddenly comes along later in life. It's not like a late onset. You're born with it. Okay, so that's a very important thing. Now, there are differences that occur.
And the development depends on what you're born with, so how much damage in the brain.
Maybe the IQ, your intelligent quotient, your capabilities.
Correct. You're born with an IQ. But second to that, you can nurture things. So say if you have a child whose intellectual development is low IQ, so lower than 100. Okay, because 100 is norm. then basically it doesn't mean that the nurturing of that child, that you can't get their IQ to 100.
Mm-hmm.
Possible. It's about the education the child receives. So always in every, even for normal
So
children,
the guidance, the
for
support.
normal children, people turn out to, depending on their innate things that they're born with,
Mm-hmm.
and the nurtured things that they have nurtured into them. It's
Okay.
a combo, okay? Nature versus nurture.
Interesting.
So for me, I was blessed with having very intelligent people around me. And I believe personally that if I didn't have a family of so many autistics, so many smart people,
lot in the family.
engineers, accountants,
Mm-hmm. Oh, very atypical jobs that
very
autistics
very
tend to go
smart
into.
people
Okay.
that are very intellectual speaking in the sense of, you know, very philosophical talking, very, you know, poetry, everything. If
Right.
I wasn't raised in an intellectual way,
Yeah.
maybe my IQ would not be normal.
Well, IDD does affect the trajectory, the forward progression of an individual's physical,
was not
intellectual,
born
and
with
emotional
A
growth.
high intellectual situation.
And I think a lot of people
So-
get that confused. And I
Yes.
think, look, for females, they can go under that radar very, very easily
So
in
if
this
I'm to
space.
explain it as a child, so let me explain it to what I was told as a child, because when you're a special needs child, you do get told why you're different to the other children. You don't have to ask. And being nonverbal, of course, I didn't speak to my special ed teachers. It might have been a yes,
If you're lucky to get a word
if
out
you're
of it.
lucky. Normally it'd be a nod.
Because you're selectively
nod.
mute, non-verbal until about
Correct.
11, 12 years of age?
11, 12.
11, okay.
Yeah,
So around that
11,
period.
12,
Just to set the
I
context.
found my voice.
And
Around
she
about,
found her voice.
yeah, in year 7, which is in Australia, you turn 12, I, through that year, because of my teacher preparing us for high school, because we enter in high school into year 8 in Australia, I was in year 7, turning 12. My teacher was OCD, so that really hit with me. Second to that, so this is a bit of nurture, just as an example. Also, her special interest was politics.
Right.
Well, I was in heaven.
Oh, okay.
So basically,
It's her fault.
brought me out.
Now we know.
Well, it brought me out of my shell. And even though she was like, I would rule up my pages, and because I didn't have fine motor skills, I would have pages ripped out in front of me
Do
and
it
thrown
again.
on the ground. Do it again.
Keep practicing until.
But guess what? Because as a dancer, since I was 3, being told that's not good enough, do it again, it didn't scare me off.
Okay, so it didn't bother you.
Autistics, when we are left untouched, we are actually quite, I would say, resilient to that behaviour.
Okay.
We don't care. We just look at the person and go, well, that was a waste of paper.
Okay, there's a very logical thought
Anyway,
process
I'll
around
just
that.
do it again. I don't mind. I'm
Is
actually
that what you want?
enjoying
You actually enjoy the
this.
ruling.
You know,
A lot
like,
of repetitive behaviours.
So I didn't care, but anyway, I found my voice.
Okay.
But basically, let me explain. So when I was young, I was way more immature than my peers, and I would say by years.
Yeah.
Okay, so my IDD as a child would be in category severe by my educators,
Can I ask,
by my family.
would you consider yourself immature now at age 50
Yes.
chronologically?
It hasn't changed.
I'm not going
So-
to, look at the things behind you, but does that
Yes.
contribute to
My
that?
personal development has assisted it, but the problem with this is, and this is one of the motivations for making this video, is people see IDD as mental illness.
Ah, yes. I
And
do
it
see
can
that come
appear
through too
the
often.
same, but if you are not tested properly, then you're going to make that judgment. So a lot of you, because there's not many of me, I'm rare, there is not actually many IDD people in the world. Let's be honest, there's not. We are a small cohort of people. There is a continuum of IDD. You can be severe, moderate, to mild. But then there's the in-betweens of those.
Just like the autism continuum sort of approach here.
Well, spectrum, yeah.
yeah.
So you can have different areas of struggle more than others.
Others people?
That's
okay.
what makes autistics different. Then you've got personality.
Oh, yeah, throw
Just
that in.
because you're autistic doesn't mean you don't have a separate personality that's just like your grandfather's or just like quirky family things.
Sure.
You still have other factors involved in personhood. So let's talk about personhood. I'm autistic, but I'm also got a personality of whoever I am, just like all you people
You see
out
those
there.
characteristics, yeah.
You guys might have a physical disability, mental disability, autism, but you still have a personality separate to that you would have had if you didn't have the other
Irregardless.
stuff,
Yep.
if you were born differently. Now, mental illness is normally acquired. Normally, like I said, there is very limited research in the sense that the brain is complex. We don't know a lot about the brain, but what we do know is bipolar and schizophrenia has physical organic causations.
Yeah.
They can prove it. The problem with the other mental illnesses are, except for things that encompass like, I've got 22q. Fear and anxiety is always part of me. It's not a mental illness for me.
It's one of the conditions
because
that
I
is seen
have
from
22q. So if I didn't have 22q, then yes, I would be going through therapies and whatever else, and sort of as a kid I kind of was, because children need a toolbox in general. Normal children need a toolbox of skills. But what I'm saying is, I cannot cure that. So if you've got a mental illness and you've got fear and anxiety, you can go and get help and you can get past it. I can't. This is something I was born with.
So it doesn't make it
I
how
have
hard you try.
pieces
It's just there.
of my DNA missing that can do that.
Yep.
So it is completely different. My immaturity, my behavior that is like
Those
mistaken for
characteristics.
trauma is not actually trauma. It is actually my lack of level of coping as an adult that you expect me to for chronological age group.
Yeah, age appropriateness.
So IDD is not always extreme, and of course I get just as much as you guys. I am so protective of severe IDD people because when I look at them, I can read them, I can sense them, I can feel them. There's a connection.
Sure.
And I think it's because I have part of the struggle of them. They have it harder, but I have part of that struggle, and I'll always be able to relate because of it.
Yep.
And I believe, and due to past experience of being in their company, they also tend to be drawn to me.
Sure.
Because they tend to notice it, and they'll come and sit next to me and look at me. They know I'm one of them. And
Take a moment.
that's something special, not just for them, but for me.
Yeah.
Because
It's relatable.
I used to be in here and not able to talk.
So stuck in your
people.
mind. Come back to that mutism, not being able to
I
express.
still now can be in a room full of my peers from 20 to 50 to 60 in a group, and it all goes over my head and I have to pretend to understand.
I think it's a lot of pretending.
And it's very isolating, and it's very embarrassing, and it's very anxiety building in the sense of, just like if you're going, not mental anxiety, like a mental illness once again, anxiety in the sense of you're going for a job interview, you're not prepared, I'm really anxious, or I'm just not good with job interviews, so I'm anxious. So I get anxious because if I'm asked a question and I'm not understanding the conversation, I get judged. And when I get judged, it turns into more than that. It turns into get taken advantage of, get abused,
These are the vulnerabilities.
manipulated, told that I'm mental, which, as you guys know, even if you have a mental illness, it being thrown at you like a weapon
weaponised.
shouldn't be done with, even if you've got a mental illness. No one should weaponize
judgment
that
from that.
at
No.
you. And no one should weaponize my IDD either. But it does get weaponized.
And again, it's a bit like the GDD, the Global Developmental Aids. You're small in size and stature. Okay, you didn't choose to be small. That's how 22 Qs caused.
That's the other thing. Like, I do love Shein genuinely, and my
that's an online shopping
my
platform.
carers and I just absolutely share that passion and have an absolute giggle, and that is not
for disability.
ever going to change. But I will say this. It's not them when they do it, but when others do it, I actually get upset because, guys, I can't go to a shop and buy a dress.
Yeah. We struggle, absolutely, in that space.
I can't just go into a shopping centre and pick out clothes. It doesn't fit me. And I miss out. But the Chinese people, their culture and their stature is like me. And so I get to buy women's clothes that look like
a lady,
a
woman, mature.
On me, make me look like a woman.
Because there's quite a lot of the time when we are in Kmart or other stores, Big W or Target, we are having to go to the kids section
my mum's
simply to find the clothes that will fit you, but then they're
like
more
I'm wearing
immature.
My mum's clothes.
Exactly.
Or
sloppy.
I have to wear kids' clothes.
Or we have to do a lot of alterations
don't look like
to fit.
Kids' clothes.
And that's a challenge too, isn't it?
Well, I buy kids' clothes that don't look like kids' clothes.
And it's not just clothes, it's also
kids,
shoes
like
or
14 or 16. Sometimes I can wear a kid's 12.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, I look for the 6s, but they don't sell them because they run out. Or even if I get a 6, narrow shoulders, it sits stupidly.
Now, just as an adjunct to that, that has also carried over not just in clothing or shoes or hatwear or gloves, but also into the medical. We go into hospitals and we need smaller blood pressure cuffs or smaller spectrums or anything. Catheters, everything's got to be smaller in size because
But basically, I guess, like, what my point is too is I have been judged for, oh, you know, my daughter's got that T-shirt or whatever, and it is embarrassing. And, you know, I love how my staff joke about me with Shein, so don't stop doing that, ladies. Like, let's keep that going.
Love a good joke.
Shein.
Hey, no, steady on.
But what I will say is, for the other people that sort of see it as being like, oh, you know, you just buy clothes, it's like, it's because I never get to buy clothes here.
Yeah, I understand that.
Because it doesn't fit.
We've had
so
months
when
and
I
years
buy
knocking
from
our shop.
Shein, I have to get my pajamas, a going out outfit if I'm invited out somewhere.
A whole range,
stuff for just houseware and whatever else because I don't fit. And I can't always get away with at 50 youth style, dress style. Like I can still rock a pair of denim shorts because of Earl or Stanley's making me look a bit younger.
Yeah,
but basically, I am my age, and sometimes I want to wear something sophisticated.
Sure.
And
that
also
visually
that's
represents
my
your
religion
age
as
and
well,
presentation values.
Like I was raised to kind of, I'm supposed to dress very sophisticated and very, you know. But basically, I don't have that option in the real world.
I think
have to purchase it in China.
I think and I understand that concept. And look, there's a whole range of benefits also for disability and being bed-bound, affordability, but also accessibility.
Guys.
Just also taking you out to the shops and being able to, the
energy,
the risks between heart and respiratory and seizures.
I don't have to go and
so
try on 1,000 things.
I'm going to circle back around because, as you said, a good analogy will be the job sort of application process when you've got IDD or being caught out where you're in a room and things are going over your head.
It's more so like when you have supervisors, right? And they've done training with lots of people.
Yeah.
Then they meet me.
What happens?
I get called dumb blonde. Are you stupid? Everybody else learnt this the first time. What is wrong with you? You're not even listening. Are your ears painted on? So
very derogatory.
I have been bullied by every workplace. I've been sexually harassed in every workplace. I have not had the social navigation skills to protect myself. I've always been saved by the people around me. Luckily, I've always had a person that's got their eye on me going,
yep. I appreciate that.
I've got you, and they see it and they step in. Men, women, doesn't matter. I've had, luckily, people just notice in these scenarios, that's not okay. I've had customers tell me, oh my God, is that how you're spoken to all the time? And I'm like,
by supervisors or other staff,
and
not on.
and they're like, you know that's not okay, don't you? And I'm like, yeah. And then I'm thinking on the spot then, because the delayed processing, and I'm going, and then they'll say it in a different way, and then I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so stupid. No wonder why I feel bad. No wonder why I feel like
You've connected the
I'm
dots.
being bullied. I am being bullied. This lady's just telling me basically to go and tell my manager, because she's saying how disgusted she was at what she just heard.
But see that whole progression of having to have
And
someone
I'm
external
shocked.
to actually explain. We use social stories to
Well,
explain a lot of things.
she was social storying me because she was with her mum.
Yeah.
She was with her, she had her baby.
And I want to talk about that a bit
was-
further, about the social stories, because I think it's a really important tool and how you've utilised it. But one key factor stands out, and you've had these people at
Well, I
different
guess I'm
times.
explaining compared to like the young ones now.
Yeah.
Guys, I used to get so bullied, and I just want to say something to Barbara Ann. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like, and you remember,
really good
and I
school
know
friend.
you remember, and I know that there's probably things that you probably still have flashing through you when you look at me. You saved me a lot, and
A very big sincere thank
that
you to
was my
Barbara Ann.
first job. So, thank you for just, I guess, just reminding me that I'm still okay.
Yeah.
That maybe other people don't think so, but that I still had people like you in my life. So I really appreciate you teaching me things, telling me what to do, how to do it. I just know that I've never forgotten it. I never will.
It's like a very important
You've
big
changed my
sister
life.
role, and particularly when you didn't have a big sister, or even unfortunately
I
what's most
consider her
important,
my
parents
sister.
who would actually nurture and support and protect you. Now with 22Q and the clinical guidelines pointing this out, it is actually almost absolute that, and particularly in the transition from childhood, adolescent into adulthood, the need to have protections,
You're meant to
support,
be under guardianships from 18.
just to be able to navigate whether it's the health and medical, but also legal and financial situations.
Also, what I'd like to explain too is, if anyone out there is like still, no, but I see you in me and I've got a mental illness.
Tell me
That
more.
is your story, and I respect that. But my channel, unfortunately, has no information for mental illness. You're welcome to sort of be here, of course, because disability is disability, right? I get
It's a nice
that.
place to hang.
So
We get
hang
that.
with us, don't leave. But please look for channels that do talk about mental illness, because mine's IDD.
And you're clarifying that very
And
importantly.
I don't respond to, of course there was therapies of how to cope with never understanding things to a certain level, because I will never
Intellectually
be able to
capable to
overcome
do,
that.
yeah.
Whereas in mental illness, you do have therapies and courses that you can do to improve those things. I don't have that anymore. I've maxed out from childhood to a certain development.
You're not only maxed out, but you're
And
actually on a
that's it.
decline, to be honest. I think not only has there been a plateau.
Well, I've regressed with
You've regression.
neurological problems, but
Yeah.
that's another video.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is like, it looks the same, guys, and I understand why you think what you think, but just know, especially when you're out in the real world, look out for people, because it might be IDD and they can't learn. And if you've got a mental illness, that should be your purpose, because you know suffering, you know disability. Look out for those IDD people like me. Look out for those things where you know they're not learning it.
Yeah.
They're not capable of learning it. They keep forgetting it. They keep needing to be chaperoned.
Yeah.
And help them out, because you're doing the therapies that help. And even though we can't do it permanently, we can do it in the moment if you help us a little bit by the side with social stories.
When there's an intellectual and it's a developmental issue, it would have been really important in the schooling side of things to get this right.
Well,
to
they did
help you through
they did
it,
do a
to
lot.
navigate
They did a
special
lot.
education.
I mean, I was probably the most cared for in special education in every school I was at.
Yeah. And look, you still left school at year 11.
I was the worst.
You left
of
with
all
a
of every
grade
school.
7 level
Correct.
of mathematics, English,
Correct.
and literature.
And I was
you later on went on and did things.
I was tutored at 22
Yep.
from year 7 education level to year 12 level, so I could start TAFE. Even though I only needed year 10, she wanted me to be like, she wanted me to be really ready.
Competent and capable.
So I really appreciated that. That was my step auntie. And
but that was teaching you at your level,
yes.
really helping you to click on
she could
how
see
to
my
learn.
struggle, because when she saw me do my maths, she's like, oh, okay. She not only saw the dyslexia, then she saw the dyscalculia. Because she was like, oh, hang on.
Big learning difficulties.
So we had to do, because she was an English teacher. So she was like, okay. But they're teachers in general, so they know. So she went through everything with me, including problem solving, which, funnily enough, that was the biggest thing we did in special ed, was problem solving.
Problem solving, yeah, that makes sense.
But basically, what another thing to this is, that the reason why treating people like me as if it's a mental illness is, when you're out in the wild and you see people like me, make sure you get it right, because especially for women, the amount of SA that we experience, and Paige Layal has talked about
She's
this.
another autistic, a Canadian autistic female. Yep.
I think there's been many more, so I can't name them all, and list them all. I listen to everyone. I don't agree. So with all of these influences, there's things I agree with, there's things I don't agree with, but I'm the kind of person where I don't judge a person's worth based on what their belief systems are. I have tolerance for everyone, and I follow everyone, because I like to hear everyone's feelings and thoughts, because there's always something I can learn.
Yeah.
But I do want to say that basically we are, if a normal girl is 1 in 4 likely to be SA before 18, then I personally think autistics with IDD, definitely it is 100% of us pretty much have had that happen.
High risk,
that
high risk.
Needs to change.
Absolutely. So the most vulnerable of those communities. And
yes,
especially
and
if they are
that's
mute or selective mute,
correct.
It's very difficult to be able to express or explain.
We don't tell.
And a bit like that scenario
It's
that you
too late
gave
when
just
we
in
tell.
this scenario where you're talking about a customer in a supermarket explaining, well, that shouldn't be taught. You don't
And
always know
I
if
didn't
something's
think
wrong
that.
or how to approach
I
and
felt
manage through
something,
that. Yeah.
but I didn't think that,
Yeah.
I should
So
complain
these are some of the
about
challenges
that.
of IDD specifically, and it's important to point them out.
And also, what are all the other people doing? Laughing behind my back. So, you know, I don't have a mental illness. I have intellectual
Developmental disability.
Yeah.
IDD.
So, I don't have the comprehension level that you think I have. I know it looks that way.
Can we talk about that for a moment, about that, why it looks that way? And I want to harp on it because people do get very confused. You know, your presentation is one of the things that confuses people. As a female, you learn social skills.
You want to hide it.
A bit like your
Why would you want it to
your
be seen?
smiling video. If you haven't seen that little short,
That was funny.
you're taught how to smile through different occasions. You know, here's a camera put into your face.
I
Please
didn't smile for. I mean, gosh, I was a flower girl 3 times.
For different weddings.
I ruined 3 weddings because I wouldn't smile.
I'm so sorry.
One of them I ran off the picture.
Right.
My brother's still there, cutesy as ever, in his
Page
suit
boy
as
outfit.
a page boy. I'm off.
Okay.
That was in Denmark.
But they're very
anyway,
intense
I never
scenarios.
smiled.
Yeah.
And I look back now and I'm just like, it makes me emotional because I had great uncles and aunties.
Yeah, people who you really want to impress and support and love, but
that I didn't just smile for them and give them a great photo.
But you couldn't manage those scenarios. You couldn't get around the processes, and it's socially overwhelming, let alone the expectations upon you. Even just flying. what is this thing called a camera that's stuck in your face?
I didn't get
what
it.
is it? It's just a box. It's like,
I
how does
found
it
it
operate?
annoying.
Why
Stand
is
still. That's annoying.
Yeah. So there are very big challenges in that approach, to be honest.
But basically, I just, even now when I warn people that I work with, like I might warn the provider, then I warn the staff.
Yeah.
I am at risk.
Yeah.
I need to be protected unless I say, I know I can trust this person, this person, this person. Only then, and I've grown up, luckily, and that's why I still believe in it, because I believe my grandfather did it with the best intentions. And I'm glad he did, even though I feel sad that I let my guard down and didn't do what he told me to do. And if I did, then nothing would have happened to me except for in childhood. Because, see, when you're a child, you don't have a choice of the positions you put in.
You need the people around you, your parents, your protectors,
an adult,
to
you can
support
get
and
tricked.
Yeah.
And when you have IDD and a world that says, let's just push her out there, which was my generation, see how she goes. It didn't go well.
No.
And so I just want to say that if you're a support worker, you're a provider, you must remember, if they tell you that they're vulnerable, protect them. They will not see the cues of flirting. I have had that situation with other women say, that person was flirting with you, blah, blah. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't see it at all.
You're not expecting to see it. It's not in your headspace.
Safe.
Yeah.
I am naive. It's called pathological naivety, and it is still a risk. And I'm 50.
And that vulnerability encompasses not just interactions or relationships, but also financial, fraud type situations.
Way, what I meant by what my grandfather was Protestant, which means you get chaperoned. Your uncles will chaperone you. I will chaperone you. Your brother will chaperone you. That was the rules, and I abided by those rules. And then even things like when I was in my 20s and I would wear certain things, and my pa would say, you know, young ladies shouldn't be wearing such things. And I remember being hurt, but at the same time thinking, you're right, Pa. Like,
words of wisdom.
I am religious. As a child, I've been religious. As a teenager, I was religious. As an adult, I've been religious. So it hit me in the gut, and I was like, you're right. I knew I was rebelling. I knew I wasn't doing the right thing. I knew what I was wearing was inappropriate.
And I'm so glad that you've got people around you like that in those instances.
No, but I felt like I'd let him down. I felt like I disappointed him. And, but anyway, like, I'm grateful for those protective things, because I know a lot of you ladies that are feminists. I respect that our views might be different if I'm conservative and you're
a bit like being a traditional parent or wife. Yeah.
I don't agree with a lot of things purely because of the same reason feminists have their reasons. I want better for women. Women are we have not we've not got anywhere. We've not got anywhere. We've not got anywhere. It is still happening. We've got nowhere. Okay? And it's wonderful with Epstein files coming out with Trump, isn't it? Because we've got nowhere. We've got nowhere. So we really need to, and that's why I'm saying, if you meet someone with IDD, please don't assume it's mental illness, because what can happen is one thing. You won't expect to protect them in the way that I just explained there from SA, which happens so much to vulnerable IDD women.
Absolutely. And
second
autistic
to that, they're going to get bullied in their workplace. Mental illness is different. You've got a struggle, but you've still got your intellect in full tact. You can learn strategies and remember them.
And be able to utilize them.
And socially engineer them and utilize them.
Okay.
I
Important
will
distinction.
never have that ability.
No.
And I will always need support.
And what we do is we understand that and we accept that at our level. And a bit like when you talk about new staff and things, because it's important to understand and accept. And we document that, because when people are in an environment, we are always protective. Okay, a bit
I
like
think
a
the only
helicopter parent over the top, but we have to be like that.
You all have to be, but the only place that shames me, and before I go on to explaining about okay, first I'll just say, for anyone with a mental illness, I apologize if this is coming across as offensive, because it might be, but my channel isn't for that.
No.
But it doesn't mean that you can't share with me the fact that you've got a disability that is a mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
I'm
don't
just
throw
saying,
it onto you and label you as that.
Yeah, you can't label me as that, because it's incorrect, and it puts pressure on me in the sense of I already punish myself for being something that I can't
Well, it's
change.
a bit like overshadowing. You can't overshadow a diagnosis. You've got a diagnosis.
Yeah.
You actually got the thing. And you are being who you authentically are because of all that.
And the problem is, when you've got IDD, it's embarrassing enough. So, for example, an example of embarrassment of having IDD is when you're in a group of your peers and you say or do something stupid. Hard. Now, I know you're all thinking, oh, but people will probably understand. No, not everyone does. Most adults are still bullies, and we all know that.
I think that commonly happens.
Second to that, I've got children who are 28 and 30. They've outgrown me in a lot of ways. I've made sure of that too. Mm-hmm. I want better for my children. I want them to have a better life than I did from childhood to adulthood. But basically, I'm embarrassed in front of my children. That is the only part of my IDD that I can't handle.
Because you know your level of capability.
Because they outgrew me, and when that happened, that's what kind of destabilized things for them.
Yep.
And that breaks my heart that I can't be the mum that they probably want. And I'm not saying that's fixed for them. That's not really what they're thinking. But sometimes they probably do, just like anyone who's got a disabled mum. They probably sometimes say, oh, I wish my mum wasn't disabled. I'm sure they all go through that. And I understand, because I have my own grief. You probably have grief. Our children are going to have grief.
Of course.
But that's the only area of embarrassment I have, is in front of my children, because of them outgrowing me.
It must be very hard
and
for
them
you.
not being able to understand that I can't grow out of where I am.
But I think we've seen this. I think it's very hard for you to navigate a lot of things, and I think I've seen various occasions where just the comprehension too. You showing that you're not understanding something, and particularly later on, because I can go, look, you didn't really quite get that, or I'm seeing that you didn't get it because you go off on wrong sort of tangents. I'm
and then you
having to
correct
come
me
in
later,
and
so
intercede
I
or recorrect, or we use, coming back to that social stories.
Yes.
We use the social stories to dissemble a situation, an interaction, or something that's occurred, for you to then be able to go, well, what did you take out of it? What did you understand?
Because I can't go back to the conversation
this is what happened.
and
No,
say,
you can't.
oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I got you really wrong.
And that's the real-time part. That's a real problem. Coming back to that bullying, that actually does affect you in a social interaction, because once you've said it or once you've done something and people just judge you and they go, oh, okay, she's thick as two bricks, or those sort of statements are made. Oh, gee, what a dumb blonde. You've had that along the way directly. You've actually had people say that specifically too, and it's like, well, that's rude.
Bullied, guys. I'm used to being bullied. Like, I actually am someone that has been bullied so much, it doesn't affect me anymore, guys. It actually doesn't affect me anymore. My mum has been my bully.
She's conditioned you to that.
I have been made resilient from it, but it shouldn't be like that.
Of course it shouldn't be like that.
I should be affected by the bullying that's going on. I should be feeling a feeling. And I know even when I see other people bullied, I get really angry if I care for that person, because it's like, I know how, I don't know, there's just, bullies are very, I guess if you'd have to be IDD to know what I'm talking about. The level, because most of you guys who don't have IDD will pick up a bully sooner than I will. And because of that, the damage that you receive will always be less than me.
Yeah, it's proportional.
I have received a level to the point where I look back and go, I am such an idiot that I let that person literally make me eat dirt or something. Like, it goes too far to the point where I kick myself. And you know what they do? Because this is why bullies are so evil. They'll go, yeah, well, you didn't say anything. You just
True, it does
You
happen,
just
and
took it.
it's a bit synonymous with this.
You know, because they know that you're stupid.
Yeah.
And they take advantage of it.
In the community, out in the wild, I've obviously engaged
hard
with
world.
people
It's
with
a harsh
IDD along
world.
the way. I've identified them when they've struggled
I've protected
with
them if I
calculation related issues. You know, they might have been struggling in a shopping centre
Yeah.
to add something up, or reading. They've asked me, what does this actually mean? You know, to try
Yeah.
and interpret a sign or a written passage to help them through. And look, I've got an education and training background, so
Yeah,
I
you're
pick
good
on that,
at
I
it,
identify
luckily.
that.
Yeah,
And look,
helps.
it's very easy to help somebody and not do anything with judgment, but just to recognise where they're at, what they might be
And you
struggling
do it
at.
well with me,
and
so I can
that's-
see that
But this
he's
is the
got
thing.
the knack.
We do things, and this is what I think gets missed with a lot of people, where it's support staff or carers or organisations
Yes.
are out so well. We have adapted our life so well to do it seamlessly to a lot of time
To
get in
not
front
be
of situations,
seen,
so it
you
doesn't
know?
become a
Because you know what,
confronting problem.
guys?
Yeah.
To actually put it out there as like a warning. Hey, she's got IDD, just like you would do for a blind person. Please just make sure that everything's set
Yeah.
up for her IDD. If you do that, you know what you're doing? All of the little mean people
It's hard to
go,
get attracted
right,
like moths to a
I'm
flame.
going to do a few things,
It's opportunistic. Yeah.
It invites
Yeah.
it because we attract
Correct.
the worst
So as
of
such,
the worst people.
sometimes very directly, overtly in front of you, sometimes very much reserved. I'm always cautiously watching because we've
Well, there's
moderated our
overt,
life.
covert,
Correct. And that's
yeah.
had to be.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's from financial, I'm obviously having to check your calculations and what
Yeah.
you do so that mistakes don't get made.
He does.
Fraud, you would have, look, my sister's been caught out on fraud before. You would be easily caught out
Click
on
on
the
something
scamming and
wrong,
frauds because you
yeah.
just don't know how to navigate through, literally navigate the clicks
Yeah.
into a website to what
Because
they
of
mean
my
or the
decline,
intent.
particularly lately
100%.
too.
So there's a whole range of
Yeah.
risks that go with this, and it's not something which. And look, you've worked in IT with me. I've explained these
But
things
I've
over the
even done
years.
it with my own kids.
I
You know,
know.
I'll say to them like, you know, at the moment, you know, things are like they are, and I'll say, you know, like, oh, but you know, gosh, like, are you so mad at me? You don't love me, and it's like, Mom, I love you so much, you know. But my lack of understanding
Yeah.
is because my brain can be childlike in certain
Very
areas.
simplified.
I am immature. I am developmentally delayed intellectually. It means that parts of my brain
Yep.
comprehend in a childlike way.
Yep.
And there's nothing I can do
And
about
that's
it.
social skills,
And my
emotion
adult
skills.
sons
Yeah.
have to kind of straight away in early adulthood, they're 28 and 30, it's like they're dealing with a dementia mother.
Yeah.
It's a lot for them to kind of go,
And that
geez,
takes
Mum,
a special
like,
level of extra
what's wrong with you?
maturity,
You know, and they're
comprehension,
not
and
in a
understanding.
negative way.
No, but what I'm saying
but it's
is
confusing
they
for them.
would need to have a special level of maturity themselves and comprehension
Yeah.
and understanding how
Yeah.
to recognize it and then also navigate
Yes.
around that
Yeah.
so that it's not a stressful job. And not everybody has got that capability. Like I said, if
No,
I can do this in the
not
wild, in
everyone's
the
good at
community,
it,
when I
yeah.
see this, but that's because I'm trained, I'm educated in that space.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's lucky, you know. Many of the
Yeah.
things that we have, we do fit dovetail together so well. It's a bit like your Erlos Danos and you're dislocating all the time. Well,
You
funnily
get it back
enough,
in.
I've done a sports science degree and learned how to become a physio with
You
sports
get it
injury.
back in.
Hey, that's really convenient because I can
Thank
pop all your joints
goodness.
back in.
I'd be
That's
a
an
chiro.
example. But you know, as an educator, it's helped me to help you to learn and
Yeah.
to navigate things, and a bit like social stories to explain.
Well, you've always been with me socially. I mean, like, I know that when I've had girls' nights out, when I was at that age group,
Yeah.
you know, I have had things happen that shouldn't have.
No.
And then other times I've actually been, like, luckily it's, you know, I've had to sort of, like, somehow put out there to one of my friends who I care for and trust. To sort of say, hey, you know, look out for me. And they do. So I've had most of the time very, very good friends sort of looking out for me. But at the same time, I've been in situations, and of course, I'm talking more when I'm younger, of course, where you think you can trust your friends and your friends aren't trustworthy and they put you in situations that aren't
Yeah.
good. And here I am out of my element because I don't have a mother looking after me.
Yeah, and that snowballs.
That was a big
from
one.
there.
When you've got IDD and you're being neglected and abused. I mean, I have been neglected. I have been abused to the point where the state, if they knew, would have taken me away.
Yep.
Okay? End of story. And my mother will never admit it because the shame. And I've always offered forgiveness because I have been moved on from it, and it has made me a stronger person for it. And it's in the past, it's gone. But I'll tell you this now, she doesn't have the strength to admit it. But for an IDD child to be in that position, okay, is totally different to my brother, who always had to step in and help me. He's only 2 years older, so that's
but still,
a lot of responsibility.
he doesn't have that encumbrance.
But he didn't have
and
IDD.
that means he's more capable to assist you.
So he used to always make sure that if it was really that bad, he would step in for me. But I suffered massive neglect and abuse. And in fact, out of the 2 children, because I've got IDD,
who was targeted
the most.
Yeah, funny about that. Look, there's many things along the way.
Happens all the time.
Whether it's 22Q or autism, or in this case IDD.
If you don't have support
when
from
you're a
parents
child and you
protected,
transition into an adult, getting to 18,
dangerous.
these things don't just stop. Okay, please just take this on board and actually think through the process.
Well, we know that with
you're
our
autistic
children.
as a child, or ADHD as a child,
I used to
or
say to
IDD.
my friends, you know,
it doesn't just stop.
I had friends say to me, because my kids were turning 18 and all that, oh, well, they should be out now. And I'm like, no, they've just become an adult. They've got to learn to be an adult. They've got to learn to pay bills.
Yeah.
I need to be there to... Because I'd have, my sons come up to me, hey, Mum, I've got to make a doctor appointment.
How
what
do
do
I
I
do this?
say? Like, that's normal, okay? Don't expect your children to just go child to adult. Oh, I know what to do. There is no book.
No.
There's no book,
No.
okay? You are the book for that child. You have to tell that child. Well, you ring up and you say, look, do you have a favourite doctor? Right. Ask for that doctor. Make an appointment. Ask for different choices of time frames.
Yeah, that's
Make
great
sure
examples
it's
of executive
blah,
functioning.
blah, blah.
But with IDD, and particularly as an adult in the transition, you also
Well, I already knew how to teach it because they taught me.
Not only have you plateaued, but you've also declined in many aspects because of your neurocognitive status of things and vulnerabilities
That's
around
what's
that.
been happening lately too.
Yeah.
So that makes it even worse. I mean, there's things that are the same, but yes, there's things that also got worse. And that's why I need people to realize my situation is not mental illness. And so, yes, we might relate on disability, but I'm sorry that I can't help you on the fact that with your mental illness, even though if you say you relate to certain parts of that, maybe you do, but the fact is the causation makes a lot of difference on the remedies, treatments. It's a bit like if you get the wrong treatment for something, you're not going to get better.
Is it going to help? No, it's not. Sometimes it's going to be more detrimental.
Things that might work for you, that's not going to be the same for me.
One of the things with mental health too, and also got to think about feelings and emotions that come into things as well. Alexithymia or interoception as well. There's big deals in that.
It's
but
tough.
People are also allowed to have emotions. Depression, clinically, you could be 6 months in a depressive state to be actually diagnosed with having depression. Everybody can have a whole range of emotions. I was saying to you only the other night myself, you can be angry, you can be sad, you can be crying, you can be laughing, you can be confused.
Don't hold it in. It's a bit like maths. And the man punched the wall. It's like
Married at First Sight.
He punched a wall.
Australia.
Okay. Wow. Let's just arrest him right now. Thought police. I mean, chill. Chill. Men are
a different breed.
Kind of violent sometimes. It's because, just like us women, we get bitchy sometimes.
You can be more emotional and verbal.
More emotional.
Now, that's not excusing domestic violence. That's not excusing violence.
And it's not excusing bitchy when we've got perimenopause or menopause or...
But are we also looking at some of the characteristics of what male and female...
Yeah, we're just talking about the biology of what makes our behaviour.
Correct.
And you know what? I've studied psychology, including the biology of psychology. Hormones affect behaviour.
Yeah.
Men act with a lot of violence when they're upset.
Or grunting.
And women, when they're upset, cry, want to talk about it. These are the differences just biologically because of the hormones.
Now, on that, just because you cry a lot, it does not mean that it's a mental health related issue
Now,
as well.
Yeah, guys, and if you're being tricked yourself, be cautious, because
That's
I'll tell you
the cautionary tale part, please.
When I studied the DSM, and we had to go through making up case studies, so I had to write it, and I had to go, right, this person has bipolar with this. This is their comorbidities. This is their coexisting conditions.
Based
blah
on
blah
the
blah blah
DSM-4
blah.
at the time, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, if you don't have that depression, let's say, for 6 months, every single day affecting your daily living, it's not clinical depression. It is depression based on stresses in life, stresses at work, stresses at home,
things.
stresses on money,
Which
stresses
we
on
all
whatever else.
get situational things, don't we? Right?
And then basically,
Trust
same
me,
with
I do.
anxiety.
I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, same with anxiety, same with anything else.
Yeah.
If it's not there for 6 months,
So a
every
pathological
day,
situation.
affecting you daily,
Yeah.
not a mental illness.
Yeah. So I feel a lot of people jump on the
So-
mental health labels and bandwidth a little bit too quickly in that space.
I do. I think you need to say to yourself, I'm suffering right now.
Yeah. Situational things do
Guys,
happen to anyone and everyone.
The world is actually against you. Dead
Yeah.
set. We all know it, okay? The world is making it impossible.
But it's not the
Rent
case where you
time,
suddenly have to
food
go and
time,
take
petrol
antidepressants
time.
and medications. Okay, so be cautious of that balancing point.
Find your best life
Yeah.
in some way, and just also understand this, and I'm just going to say this, and it's in the Bible. You're not promised a good day every day.
No.
If you have a bad day, just go with it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Tomorrow will be a better one,
Have
hopefully.
some ice cream.
Absolutely. That's a win.
Just indulge in the ice cream. Doesn't matter. Okay? It's just a bad day.
Yeah.
It's going to go, and another one will come back. Even though we all do the thing of, you'll say, it's a better day tomorrow, and I go, no, it's not. It's going to be the same as today.
But I wanted to point that out mainly because also for Dyan with 22Q, and I say this in context of she's got 22 different specialists that she's dealing with, 185 different symptoms clinically that she deals with. She's not a normal person.
The symptoms
A lot
I
of
deal
normal
with every
people
day.
might only have
It's a
one or
lot.
two things that they have to, if ever, go to hospital with. And it's funny because it's like,
Death by 1,000 paper cuts.
it is, and those paper cuts are coming from the cardboard and the thin paper and the thick paper. So many different avenues. It's actually a bit of a struggle because
It is
Dyan's
a
got a
struggle.
lot to deal with. So some days she might be struggling and being upset about respiratory and why she's struggling to get oxygen, or cardiology, why she's having intense heart pain, or why her brain's gone offline and she's forgotten a memory or having seizures. You throw all these sort of things in, and then you're popping with pain because you've got EDS, or stand loss, and
I'm on
so much to
tramadol
deal
every
with.
single day at the moment. It's annoying.
So I give a little extra tolerance because
Hate it.
not only one thing, you've got multiple things, and it's like, again, coming back to going, this is
Can't
not a mental
eat.
illness, this is a physical ailment. This is what 22Q actually presents like. This is what we expect to deal with, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And basically, when you've got IDD, when you are faced with a challenge, we don't cope just like a child.
Yeah.
We don't cope. Okay, and we need assistance in, okay, right, you've just dropped the bag of shopping. It's okay. What we're going to do is, and now I can do this out of the situation.
But in the
Because
situation.
I've had the situation done with me so many times.
Yeah.
But the fact is, our reaction is because we are immature. We don't have the good problem-solving skills. We can't think on the spot. We freeze, okay? We don't know what we're doing. We don't have good executive functioning. I'm also a seizure patient that's had increased seizures in the last 13 years. My regression is real.
Absolutely.
And that's why I've been putting off going to the neuropsych, because I am afraid of my next report. I
show
know
further
it's going to
decline.
be
Yeah.
further decline, and I'm scared about. It's not the fact that I know it's going to be; it's the fact that how much it is.
Yeah, and we're
That
monitoring and
scares
measuring
me.
these things for a reason, obviously,
But
as we go along.
basically, I'm always going to be immature, but literally, like in that video, straight after that, there was a different person in me straight away. So if I had a mental illness, that's not how it would work.
That would stick around.
It would stay around. So there's also that. I'm letting you know that because you might be trying to work it out for yourself. You might be trying to work it out for someone in your family or a loved one or someone you care about. But that's the difference
Yeah, so knowledge
between
and
IDD, mental illness, autism,
great
whatever.
distinctions, but acknowledgement too of what the situation is, what you've got, what you're dealing with
Well,
is really
global
important.
developmental delays too. It's in every area that you face.
Yeah.
And so when you are 50 years on this earth, you learn a lot of cover-up ways. And when you look at shows like Love on the Spectrum, guys, okay, look at them closer, okay? Like, all of them have a coping strategy to trick you into seeing their age group as being their age group, or
Yep.
they do it, okay?
Absolutely.
They're very clever. We're all very cheeky at it,
Yeah.
okay?
And a bit
we
like
stick to our
YouTube.
special interest.
And that's what I'm going to say, because on YouTube, you focus on your special interests, areas that you have passion,
22Q,
knowledge.
autism.
You know, you look at any one of these areas and I go, Resin art. Oh, well, she has spent years refining that down with hundreds, if not thousands of hours, learning the techniques and practicing and getting it right. Has she had a lot of failures and fuck-ups along the way? Hell yeah.
Not that many.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? We've also worked out ways to assist you. I'm the one doing calculations. I'm doing ratios.
Yes.
I'm measuring.
So sometimes I have
supporting.
to ask for support, you know,
and it's okay.
on learning things
because that's what you need.
Learning things has always been hard. And I would be laughed at by some nasty people at uni. And luckily I had a good group around me at uni, so I didn't care about the nasty people. But they would laugh at me that it took me 3 hours to read a chapter when they took 15 minutes. But I didn't care, because the fact is, 22Q stats of going to university is low.
Absolutely.
22Q stats of getting married is low. 22Q stats of driving a car and being independent, which I have had pockets of time of massive independence, is very low. With 22Q stats, having children is very, very low.
So relationships and even life expectancy, I'm also going to point out.
I'm grateful I've had it hard,
low, unfortunately.
But now, guys, I let it all out. This channel is the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yep.
And if I'm
raw,
not coping,
authentic. Yep.
and it's to do with my IDD, I will show it whenever I want to.
Yep.
And I just want you to understand that mental illness is just not a topic that I want on my channel in the sense of discussions and talking about it. It's just not my thing.
Because we can't help people in those conditions or those diagnoses. We can't give advice or guidance.
I have nothing on that.
Experience.
It's just not, like, I have learnt this in my studies, but I'm not under any insurance body or any coverage. I cannot
association,
give out any guidance, information, advice, none of that. So basically, it's just not something I can assist. But if people are here with a mental illness that have other things you share, like you share autism with me, or you share other things with me, that's great. If you don't have anything else you share with me,
of course I do.
Mental illness is a disability. It might not be always a permanent one, but it is a disability, and you're welcome here. Like, the struggle is real, right?
Yeah.
Different struggles. You don't have to have the same symptoms to
but
be like,
we'll clarify
struggling.
this in the comments and comment sections quite a lot too, because when we've got a video, it's normally on a specific topic.
Be new people.
And when there's a specific topic, we want to keep the conversation related to that topic. We need to keep it focused around the fact that we are advocating and educating around 22Q, the conditions that you've got underneath the umbrella, whether it's autism, ADHD, Ehlers-Danlos loss, Tourette's, seizures, you name it. We're talking about the language. It's very important because we don't want to confuse people out there. We want them to get the appropriate, up-to-date education based on the medical research that's happening in life.
The seizures is because genetic seizures is different to... It's a new category, basically.
There's still
coming
so
out,
much for them
and
to learn.
it's just beginning,
and
they're starting to learn. And one day, maybe in 50 years, people will look at my video and go, "That's handy because we're doing research on this." So, my channel is there to educate as well. I want to be an advocate. That's my goal. Is to get the word around through you guys as well, to share with your friends and make sure that everyone is getting good care. Because I know when I've had diagnoses along the way, the best advice I've gotten and the best things I've learned is from other people online who are living with my conditions.
Absolutely.
I've always improved because of watching them and how they do their lifestyle and going.
And that's why
That
it's
helped
important
me.
today to clarify what you've got
Yes.
and where you're at. Guys, thank you so much for joining us in today's episode. Give Dyan a big thumbs up of encouragement.
And just know that IDD can be unseen. So if you look at someone and you go, oh, they're a bit odd, they might have IDD. And I want tolerance. I don't want just tolerance for the severe. I want tolerance for the severe. Otherwise I'll come and... But I'm saying I want tolerance for no matter where we are on that continuum. I always get spectrum and continuum.
Interverse.
Jump.
Yep.
But continuum, because you don't have to be severe. You don't have to be sort of mild. It doesn't matter where you are along that continuum. The struggle is real.
Indeed.
And when you get mistaken for mental illness, the reason why it's a problem is you get lectured. And the problem with that is none of those lectures are any point in it,
There's
because
no
there's
relevancy.
nothing that's relevant, and there's no treatment of mental
So it's very
illness
important
treatments
to
that
get it right
fits
and
IDD.
match it up. So if you're not getting things matched up, hey, we've been through that long enough.
Make sure
Yeah.
for yourself, if you don't get the right diagnosis and you don't get the right treatment, you're not going to get
You're not
the
going to
right
get anywhere.
result.
Truth, that's the fact
Yeah.
of it. Guys, if you've got comments, questions,
Thanks
ideas, and
for
suggestions,
listening.
leave them below. Like I said at the very beginning, if you're new to the channel,
Long
welcome.
podcast, but
Don't
a
forget
good
to
topic.
subscribe and hit that
But
notification
a
bell.
good topic.
I think it's an important topic.
Is it autism or mental illness? Because those things can get jumbled up.
Interchanged as well.
Is it IDD or mental illness? That could get jumbled up.
Yeah.
Is it
Or is it mental illness at all? When it's just
Is it
maybe
men-
emotions or a
Does
situation that's
everyone
occurred.
with autism have IDD?
Yeah.
But they're just different on the continuum.
Again, on the continuum.
I don't know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research that's still to be done in longitudinal
Yes.
studies in
There's
that
a
space,
lot
let
of-
alone under 22q
What do they
11.2
call it?
deletion syndrome.
There's a lot of hypotheses
Hypotheses.
that I
That's
could
that one.
put out there.
Indeed.
But that's just because that's my passion, because I would love to do journal articles about these
Okay.
things.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed
But-
today's conversation. I hope you've learned something and had something to at least think and inspire a conversation. Guys, we'll love you and leave you. We'll see you in another
Thanks for
episode
listening.
real soon. Bye for now.
Bye.